meditation on the divine sound, on the sound, is meditation of Nada Brahma, the divine sound, Om. Is meditation, this is his question, is meditation on the sound ever recommended by Ramana?
No, no. It is not, because the sound Om, what is important with the sound Om is what is that, the sound Om is a word. What is that word referring to? It is a word that refers to Brahman. Brahman means our own real nature. So but as Bhagavan said, the first and foremost mantra, the first and foremost name of God, let's say, is I. Om is only secondary to that. So Bhagavan used to sometimes say, I is the elder brother, Om is the younger brother. Because though Om refers to our own real nature, do any of us go around referring to ourselves as Om? Om is sitting here, Om is talking. No, we naturally refer to ourselves as I. So, but even Bhagavan didn't even recommend, for those who had difficulty grasping what is self-attention, he sometimes said, even if you go on thinking I, it will lead to that place. That means that the source, the birthplace of the mind. When he said that, what he meant by that is, when we say the word I refers to what? It refers to ourselves. So every word refers to something. When we mention a word, it brings to our mind that to which it refers. So if I say New York, it brings a certain city to our mind. If I mention ocean, it brings a vast body of water to our mind. If I say apple, it brings a certain fruit to our mind. If I say running, it brings a certain activity to the mind. When we say when we say I, that word I, if whatever, it doesn't matter which language it is. If English happens to be our mother tongue, then I. If our mother tongue happens to be French, then it's je. If it's Spanish, then yo. If it's Sanskrit, then aham. If it's Tamil, it's nan. There are so many different words, but whatever is not the word that is important. What is that word referring to? It's referring to ourselves. So by thinking of that word, that draws our attention back to ourselves. Just like thinking the word apple brings a certain object to our mind, a certain fruit to our mind, thinking the word I brings to our mind that which the word I refers to. So Bhagavan is not recommending meditating on the sound I or the sound Om, but on what those sounds refer to. That is ourself. There's an incident in Bhagavan's life that you may be aware of. There was a person called Kavyaganta Ganapati Sastri. He was a great poet in Sanskrit. And he, from a young age, he wanted to do tapas. The aim for which he wanted to do tapas means austerity. He thought that his aim was to gain Shakti and Siddhis, powers, because he wanted to do good in the world, what he thought was good in the world. So he wanted to restore the Vedic Dharma and to drive the British out of India and to establish righteousness in the world. He had so many ambitions like that. And he thought that if he does tapas, he will be able to gain that power. So he was for a long time doing tapas, particularly mantra japa he was doing, in order to gain this power. He had heard about Bhagavan some years before, some 3 or 4 years earlier. He'd heard about Bhagavan, but some young Swami sitting on the hill, he wasn't much interested. But on that particular day, he happened to be in Tiruvannamalai, and he happened to be very frustrated because he didn't seem to be getting anywhere with all his mantra japa and all his other sadhanas. So he came to Bhagavan. And he climbed up the hill, and he saw Bhagavan sitting outside Virupaksha cave. He prostrated himself before Bhagavan, and he said something to the following effect: I've studied all the Vedas and numerous other books. I've done countless crores, that is tens of millions of mantra japa, that's repetition of mantras. I've fasted and eaten very little, yet what is it that is actually meant by tapas is still not clear to me. Graciously explain to me what tapas really is. At first, Bhagavan just kept quiet and silently gazed at him. But after about 15 minutes, Kavyaganta said, I've read in books about such chakshu diksha, that's initiation by sight, but I cannot grasp the truth that is taught thereby. So graciously explain in words. Bhagavan then said, the meaning of what he said in Tamil, Nan nan embadu enge irandu purupadu kirado ade gavanital manam ange linamahum aduve tapas. That means if one attentively observes that from where what says I goes out, there the mind will be dissolved. That alone is tapas. The reason Bhagavan framed the answer like that is, Kavyaganta's question was, I have studied all the Vedas, I have done so much mantra japa, I have fasted, I have done this, I have done that. So what Bhagavan says is, if one attentively observes that from where what says I goes out. So what is it that is saying I have done this, I have done that? That is ego. From where does that ego go out? Only from ourselves. That is, ego cannot arise from anything other than ourselves. Because as I mentioned earlier, what remains in sleep is only ourself. Ourself in the sense of our being, I am. That is what we actually are. Ego rises only in waking and dream. So it must rise from something that is there in its absence. In the absence of ego, what remains is only ourself. So ego rises from ourself, from our own being. So attentively observing that from where what says I goes out means attentively observing ourself, the source from which ego has risen. And he says, if one attentively observes that, in other words, if one attentively observes oneself, there the mind will be dissolved. That alone is tapas. In other words, Bhagavan is saying self-attentiveness alone is tapas. And by self-attentiveness, the mind will subside and dissolve back in its source. That is the implication. In many books, it is said, but Bhagavan then gave a second answer. But Bhagavan didn't give the second answer of his own accord. The reason Bhagavan gave the second answer is that when Kavyaganta heard this first answer, he was bewildered, because this was something, though he'd read so many books, he'd read the study of the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Tantras and so many different books he had studied, never had he come across a teaching so simple and clear as this. So he was a bit bewildered by it, by the unfamiliarity of this teaching. So he asked, is it not possible to attain that state even by mantra japa? So in reply to that second question, Bhagavan said, the meaning of what Bhagavan said is, well, I'll just read the Tamil for those who know Tamil. Oru mantra te japam panninal, and the mantra dvani enge irandu purupadi kiradu endru gavanital manam ange linam akiradu. Adutan tapas. The meaning of that is, if one does japa of a mantra, in other words, if one repeats a mantra, if one attentively observes from where that mantra sound goes out, there the mind is dissolved. That itself is tapas. So has Bhagavan given a second technique here? No, because if we pay close attention to what he says if one does japa of a mantra, if one attentively observes from where that mantra sound goes out. So if you are doing japa, if you're mentally repeating a mantra, from where is that mantra sound coming? It's coming only from you. So when he says, if one attentively observes from where that mantra sound goes out, he means if you attentively observe yourself, there the mind is dissolved. That itself is tapas. So actually, this second teaching, what Bhagavan is teaching in the second teaching, is exactly the same that he taught in the first teaching. But in both cases, he's saying that we should attend to ourselves, the source from which ego and everything else arises. And if we attend to ourselves, the source from which all these things rise, the mind will be dissolved there, everything else will be dissolved along with it, and that alone is tapas. In other words, the subsidence of ego is alone tapas, and the subsidence of ego can be achieved only by self-attentiveness. So why I brought up this now in relation to this question, because the question is whether Bhagavan recommended meditation on the sound Om. No. Even if people wanted to do do japa of the sound Om, Bhagavan would say what you should attend to is the source from which that sound is coming. That source is yourself. So the sound, though the sound Om refers to Brahman, like all words, it's something other than ourself. Even the word I is something other than ourself. That's why Bhagavan didn't ask us to meditate on the word I, but he said you can think the word I, but the intention is to meditate on ourselves, what the word I refers to. And in other places, Bhagavan says, without even uttering the word I by mouth or by even mentally uttering the word I, the mind should go deep within. So the true meditation, the meditation taught by Bhagavan, is only Swarupa Dhyana, meditation on our own real nature.